Hi, I'm Mark, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views report on German politics. In the debate about more money for the Bundeswehr, that's the German army, the union in the Bundestag points out that an increase in the military budget of almost 15 billion euros would be indicated in the coming year. This is the only way to achieve the goal agreed by NATO that all states invest 2% of their gross domestic product in defense. That was said by Ingo Gedichens from the Christian Democratic Union, a member of the Budget Committee, and he told this to the newspapers of the Bayern Media Group on Wednesday. Compared to the current budget for 23, at least 14.8 billion euros would have to be available in the coming year in order to finally achieve the 2% target, he said. The CDU budget politician still considers the 10 billion more in defense spending now proposed by Defense Minister Boris Pistorius to be a first step in the right direction. However, he does not believe that it will be implemented. With the massive upheavals within the traffic light coalition, I cannot see that the 10 billion euros that are in the room at the moment will actually be made available, he said. Chancellor Olaf Scholz assured in Munich on Friday that Germany would permanently increase its defense spending to 2% of gross domestic product. Finance Minister Christian Lindner believes that the irregular entry of migrants to Germany must be prevented more effectively. In addition, more deportations of rejected asylum seekers are needed. That's what the Liberal politician told the news portal T-Online on Wednesday. Influx into the country is currently not being adequately controlled because we are not adequately preventing irregular migration, he said. And he said, what we don't need is irregular migration, which is illegal but still leads to permanent residence and social benefits. He suggested smoothing the way for immigrants who want to work here by, among other things, having existing qualifications recognized more quickly. On the other hand, there needs to be more consistency in dealing with migrants who have no right of residence. In his own words, Lindner expects that the newly appointed migration officer Joachim Stamp will conclude agreements with the countries of origin on the repatriation of irregular migrants. In response to the death sentence passed by a court in Tehran against German-Iranian Jamshid Sharmacht, the German government has expelled 2 Iranian diplomats. This was announced by Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock from the Greens on Wednesday in Berlin. A revolutionary court had held the 67-year-old Sharmat responsible for a terrorist attack, among other things, as the justice portal Mizan announced on Tuesday. Baerbock explained that she had summoned the charge d'affaires of the Iranian embassy in the view of the death sentence. Such an appointment is considered quite a sharp diplomatic device. He had been informed that they do not accept the massive violation of the rights of a German national, as the foreign minister said. As a result, the federal government declared 2 members of the Iranian embassy to be undesirable, so persona non grata, and asked them to leave Germany at short notice. The exclusion of the Desiderius Erasmus Foundation, which is close to the extreme right-wing AfD, from state funding in 2019 violated the party's right to equal opportunities. This was announced by the Federal Constitutional Court in Karlsruhe on Wednesday. The judges declared AfD applications for other budget years inadmissible, and for 2022 a separate decision should be made at a later date. The tank builder Krauss-Maffei-Wegmann, or KMW, sees no industrial obstacles to a significant increase in production. The company is constantly asking subcontractors what production rates are possible, said KMW boss Ralf Ketzel to the German press agency in Berlin. So far, nobody has given us a signal like, that's not possible, he said. What we need for this is a clear political consensus, he said. Almost a year after the start of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, the capacities and capabilities of Western armament companies will also be a topic, or were also a topic at the Munich Security Conference that went until Sunday. The German armaments industry has repeatedly criticized the fact that, despite all the political declarations, hardly any orders have been received, even though production has a considerable lead time, so it takes quite some time. KMW is a manufacturer of weapon systems such as the Leopard 2 main battle tank and the self-propelled howitzer 2000. With more than 4,000 employees, the Munich-based company describes itself as the market leader for highly protected wheeled and tracked vehicles in Europe, like the Dingo. In a new survey, the union is in first place by a clear margin in favor of voters. According to the political barometer published on Friday, 30% of voters would opt for the CDU and CSU in the federal election if it were to take place on Sunday. The union was the only one able to improve by several percentage points with a +3 compared to the last political barometer. They are followed by the Social Democrats with 20%, just ahead of the Greens with 19%. The FDP, the Liberals, comes in the survey to 5%. If they were actually elected, they would have to worry about entering the Bundestag. The situation is similar for the left, which is also at 5%. The right-wing AfD reaches 14%. With these values, the governing coalition of SPD, Greens and FDP would no longer achieve a majority in the Bundestag. The so-called traffic light parties come together to only 44%. In the 21 federal election, they were able to unite for 52% of the votes. The State Office for the Protection of the Constitution in Saxony registers a radicalization in protest movements. That also applies to the climate movement, which is more dominated by the left, said the head of the authorities, Dirk Martin Christian, to the German press agency. And he said, "We have noticed a certain lack of distance from left-wing extremist positions among climate activists. There are forms of action, including serious crimes, which parts of the climate movement either do not reject or only half-heartedly reject. Both the corona protests and the anti-refugee protests have led to a dissolution of boundaries in mainstream society. Right-wing extremists propagate issues and thus find a connection with the middle classes," said Christian. People from the middle of society would not contradict extremist positions and would not mind demonstrating alongside right-wing extremists. Right-wing extremism remains the greatest threat to democracy in Saxony still. According to the Committee on Eastern European Economic Relations, the price cap for Russian crude oil is indeed having an effect. The idea with a price cap works, said Michael Harms, managing director of the committee, on Wednesday in Berlin. What we are hearing from the companies involved is that, above all, Arab, Turkish and Chinese banks are very reluctant to trade Russian oil products, he said. Russia apparently has to sell its diesel below value. The Ukrainian ambassador Alexei Makeyev has criticized left-wing politician Sarah Wagenknecht for her proposal freeze to the course of the fronts and to hold peace negotiations with Russia. Makeyev accused Wagenknecht in the public Morgen magazine of suggesting that in the case of criminal offenses, it would be better to enter into negotiations than to call the police. The war is a bit far away even from German television viewers, said Makeyev. Anyone who works for peace must say to Kremlin boss Vladimir Putin, "Get out of Ukraine." And I must say he's right there. In the middle of the month, Wagenknecht published a so-called Manifesto for Peace, together with the feminist Alice Schwarzer, in which they warn of an escalation of the Ukraine war. It has been sharply criticized by numerous commentators, including calling on attacked Ukraine to compromise. And they can't seriously be serious. And if you saw the video they published when they launched the whole thing, those two women who are so far from reality also were standing there making jokes and laughing while bringing their manifesto to light. And this concludes this week's report on German politics. I'll see you tomorrow on the report on British politics. I'll be back.